Thank you for joining us. My name is Carrie Smith, and on behalf of Cumulus Networks, I'd like to welcome you to Making the Switch to Bare Metal and Open Networking. Presenting today will be William Cho. William is the Senior Director of Products and Alliances at Cumulus Networks. Most recently, he was the Executive Director of Marketing at Dell Networking, and prior to that, he was at Cisco, where he was the Senior Director of Marketing, contributing to the growth of Catalyst fixed configuration switching to $6 billion per year. The webinar will be about 30 to 45 minutes. We will answer a few questions from the participants at the end if time permits. For those of you interested, you have the opportunity to ask questions during the webinar by using the window marked questions. Simply type in your question and click send. You can also tweet your questions to us, and our Twitter handle is @CumulusNetworks. And with that, I'd like to turn this over to William.
Thank you, Carrie. So Happy New Year to everyone. It's an exciting time. As Carrie mentioned, what I'd like to kind of focus on here today is bare metal and open networking, and really understand how customers and how the ecosystem is bringing bare metal and open networking to the market, evaluate the broad adoption, and ultimately recognize that it's an exciting time in networking today. And it might be helpful to start really kind of looking at how this all has come about. And if you think about the web scale operators have been adopting bare metal and open networking capabilities for 5+ years now, one of the key tenets is built around this idea of vendor independence, creating the disaggregation of software and hardware, and then automating the complete data center environment. Not only the compute infrastructure, but networking allows for a significant operational cost savings, rapid innovation. So now you have the ability to standardize on tool sets, and most importantly, now you can deploy a transparent or an invisible fabric to allow for applications to have no barriers as it relates to performance. And the key point here is that these are design points or tenets that actually scale from a 10 rack environment to thousands of racks. And so the point being is this is meant for all customer environments, whether small or large. And so when you think about this, this is actually not a new notion. Networking in the data center as an open architecture has been going on for some time, first in the compute space. And so as you guys might recall, when we had RISC-based servers, Unix-based platforms, you had a completely vertically integrated solution from hardware, operating systems, and applications. And then with x86 and Linux, that transformation occurred, and you saw a significant change in the economics of compute implementations, but also in terms of the flexibility, in terms of the innovation. And so nowadays, by and large, compute is deployed as completely disaggregated, x86 and Linux, or any other third-party operating system for that matter. And so networking has been making that journey and transformation, first with the web scale operators, 4 or 5 years ago, but now you're finding, the mid-market, mainstream enterprise adopting this model around the globe. And so when you look at this and what this means for the industry, it helps to evaluate the networking supply chain. And so at the kind of very basic level, you have contract manufacturers that effectively provide procurement, manufacturing, logistics services. And for instance here, Celestica and Foxconn are the largest of contract manufacturers in the industry today. They provide this large-scale, cost-effective manufacturing service for networking hardware, among other infrastructure, but typically to the OEM as customers. And then similarly, you have Finisar and JDSU that provide optics or interconnects. They are the manufacturers of the optics and cables, and they are typically rebranded by those same OEMs. And so the OEMs we're all very much familiar with, as it relates to data center switches, they're often leveraging that supply chain for relatively standard reference designs, logistics, and professional services. And then subsequently, the end user consumes these technologies, sometimes directly from the OEM, but oftentimes leveraging distributors and resellers. And these distributors often are providing that local stocking, providing predictable lead times, while facilitating a very large or vast reseller community. And that reseller, often comes in various different shapes and sizes, providing, on one hand, a very low-cost fulfillment engine, or oftentimes a very full-service system integration capability. And then with that, what I'd like to kind of share with you is, what that traditional networking supply chain means for the end user. And so here, generally a supply chain is adding value in the transformation of goods and services, with every step along the way. And with each transformation is effectively represented by here some cumulative cost and an industry standard gross margin. So as you can see here, if you just take a hypothetical gross cost starting point of $100 and a contract manufactured industry margin of 10%, the transfer cost to the OEM effectively becomes $111. And then with an OEM standard margin of 70%, their transfer cost to the distributor is $370, and so on and so on. And ultimately, as you can see here, what happens is as that transformation occurs by way of the supply chain, is that the end user is effectively paying a 4.5x multiplier from that raw cost of $100 as a basic denomination. Now, if you think about this, historically this made a lot of sense, because with complex systems, evolving standards, a lot of the IP was really born and developed by way of the OEMs. However, as markets mature, most of that value is actually being generated earlier, and a lot of this, as we may know today, is you look at the hardware and the bare metal switch, much of it is merchant silicon, and ultimately, because the standards having become very flattened, if you will, and being integrated into an SoC or a system on a chip, that technology is being effectively baked in earlier on, and even OEMs today you're finding are leveraging merchant silicon for those standard bare metal switches or data center switches. Now, if you kind of fast forward to what's happening today with the modern networking supply chain, is that you have a very similar model, being able to leverage the distributors and resellers, being able to provide the delivery of goods and services to end users. But obviously, the one very obvious change here is that multiplier, again, from that same $100 cost of goods as a basic denomination, now presents itself as a 1.8x multiplier. And with that, what you're finding today is that those same contract manufacturers in some cases, and there's the ODMs, the original design manufacturers, who traditionally supply the OEMs, are now providing products and technologies, for 5+ years to the web scale operators, but over the last couple of years directly to end users globally, and of all sizes. And then more recently, over the last 12 to 18 months, OEMs such as Dell, being the first to offer an open networking solution with a choice of operating system, is also leading and changing the industry as it means to being able to procure, deploy, and operate bare metal and open networking systems. And ultimately, what this means for the customer is that for that every $100 spent, there is an incremental $278 or 2.5x premium from going from the traditional to the modern networking supply chain. And so this becomes a very compelling CapEx differentiation that's just inherent in that supply chain. Now, as you translate that to, what does that mean for me, as a customer? What we try to express here is that, not only is there a significant cost savings and putting it into very tangible terms, if you will. So if you look at a traditional networking switch, whether it be a Cisco Nexus 3K or the more recently introduced Nexus 9K, there is a significant CapEx savings, as you can see here. But one of the other kind of major benefits that actually comes about with this transition to open networking, very similar to the compute industry, is you have simplified and transparent pricing. And the key point being here is that historically, networking has always had this very high list price and a very broad range of discounts. If you were a very large cloud operator, you might get very high discounts, but mid-markets will see much lower discounts, and those discount ranges can often spread 60, 70 points. However, what you'll find is that a much more friendly, a much more transparent pricing model, just very similar to the compute industry, is you'll have effectively a MSRP, which for lower volumes where networking as well as servers are often transacted at, with a reasonable discount, something in the 20% range, let's say, for much larger scaled deployments. And ultimately, the customer benefits by this because the pricing is not a big kind of negotiation game as you might experience in buying a used car, as an example. And then the next key benefit also comes around the fact that with an open networking, customers now have the choice of picking and choosing interconnects, whether it be a twin-X cable or a 10 gig transceiver as we've depicted here. You can see here the disparity, and many of you might have had this similar experience, on a more personal level, buying, an HDMI cable. As I had recently bought, some audio video equipment over the holidays, you're often paying, 10, 20x for what that cable really should be priced at. And so you can see here, industry-leading SFP plus SR optics as a list price is $1,000. And if you're getting a very significant discount, maybe that's the street price is somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 to $400. And as you can see here, in ODM SFP plus SR optics at $40, even price point from the traditional vendor discounted, you're looking at orders of magnitude difference. And so this is, one of the key, I'd say, Achilles heels in the industry, and customers are recognizing that this needs to change at a minimum, and being able to leverage the open ecosystem, not only from the switch perspective, but also as it relates to interconnects and cables. Now you might ask, so this is great. I love the idea of having, the low cost, CapEx option. I like the ability to have choice. And so, where can I buy this is often the next question. And so, we at Cumulus Networks, along with the other broader ecosystem of solution providers, pushing this new model, this new era of bare metal switches and open networking, is it really making it easy to procure by way of your own typical channels, partners, or local resellers, as well as online alternatives. And so here you can see there are a couple options, whether it be whitebox.com or baremetalswitch.com. You'll find that you can find bare metal switch providers that we support by way of our hardware compatibility list, and the option to be able to procure Cumulus Linux, as simple as add to cart here. Not only that, you often are going to get the value-added services as it relates to local spares and a return to depot service capability, and a global 25 24/7 global support capability. And the key here is that you're able to leverage that traditional supply chain, distribution, and resellers that are regional or may have some vertical capabilities that you're more accustomed to, and we're looking to enable that as you would expect to adopt bare metal and open networking today. Okay. Now with that, I wanted to kind of turn the page here, and as you can kind of internalize that, there perhaps is a significant benefit around having choice and having a significant cost savings as it relates to having bare metal switching. What we also want to make sure that you take away is that you can also get great networking with a choice of architectures. And so we at Cumulus Networks, look to make sure that we can ease the migration to bare metal switching and open networking by being able to have, any number of network architectures that you have a preference for, whether it be a traditional layer 2 network, an IP fabric, or more recently, IP fabrics with network overlays leveraging technologies like VXLAN. And so we support all as an option. So with a traditional layer 2 network, whether leveraging a spanning tree technology or MLAG, we can make this a very seamless drop-in architecture for your existing environments, while others that might want to leverage IP fabrics, whether for the core or completely to the host, we make IP cloth fabrics, very scalable and very easy to deploy with some key innovations there. And then lastly, the IP fabrics with network overlays, one of the key approaches here is to be able to have VXLAN tunneling capabilities, NCAP and TCAP in hardware, but also having a choice of overlay partners. And so we'll talk about that as there are industry leaders with VMware, as an example, with NSX, but there are also many other emerging overlay partners that are coming about, such as OpenContrail or Midakura. And so this offers a much more scalable and virtual approach to bridging that physical and virtual world together. And so that is one of the key tenets, is being able to adopt networking architectures of your choice, but we're also looking to simplify operations, from the whole life cycle, if you will. And so if you think about how the compute industry has evolved, arguably at much larger scale, operations were simplified day zero by way of leveraging Pixie Boot to install configurations, operating systems in a very zero-touch manner. And so we at Cumulus have kind of modeled the networking day zero environment in a very similar fashion. And so U-Boot is kind of the BIOS equivalent, if you will. And having originally developed Oni, the open network install environment, which is now an OCP project, completely open source and available on GitHub, is now you have the ability to leverage a bare metal switch, which you will find with our hardware compatibility list. Every single one of them have adopted Oni as their own bootloader capability. And then as you want to adopt this capability, you can fully automate what it means from installing Cumulus Linux as a bootloader, installing particular agents. Here are some examples of various automation tools. Puppet or Chef are often quite popular examples historically in the compute industry. Ansible is another one. And once you install these agents, you can completely create templates and be able to load particular configurations, load other software agents, and be able to completely automate this, very similar to what you may leverage in the compute environment. And this really takes out kind of the manual nature, not only compressing the time to deploying that data center environment for networking. and allows you to get into a production environment fashion in a much more seamless and timeless way. Okay, so building on that, and as you think about the broader life cycle of your data center environment, what we wanted to touch on here is the software-defined network. And here at Cumulus Networks, we have an architectural approach or point of view that I would say is very different from alternative approaches to SDN by way of a proprietary stack. And so interestingly, if you look at both approaches, they both leverage a very broad ecosystem. Where proprietary stacks will have highly engineered solutions with tight integration across all layers, the question that you need to consider here is that if a solution component is not what you expected, whether day one or 6 months in, you are tied into that stack because everything is tightly integrated and coupled in that fashion. And so what the loosely coupled architecture really enables is flexibility at all layers, ultimately choice. And some of the key points that we'd like you to consider ultimately is really by way of being able to leverage a standard Linux interface, you have a broad and a very rapidly evolving ecosystem. And so the broadness is just historically exists because Linux has been in deployment in production in the server environment for some time. You have the ability to leverage various monitoring tools, automation tools, and bringing the networking construct now into that fold and providing that consolidated or converged administration. And along with that, you have broad customer choice. And so as there are many automation tool choices that we touched on, there are also quite a few different network virtualization overlay choices. Orchestration is also a broad option capability that customer ultimately benefits with. And then with that comes the acceleration around innovation. And this can come in some very simple ways, such as being able to take advantage of the latest security technology that might be available, being able to adopt various storage solutions in a converged fashion, but even around being able to take advantage of security patches. And so you may have heard about or experienced some of the issues. Heartbleed was a broad issue around the OpenSSL interface. As a matter of fact, the Linux community was able to patch and address the Heartbleed virus upon announcement, literally within a few hours, and we had a patch in a similar fashion for Heartbleed in that same day of the announcement. Shellshock is another great example of that, and because it's just a Linux distribution, you can effectively just take that OpenSSL package or the Shellshock package and be able to patch that in your distribution, regress that, and introduce that in your production environment very quickly. And so it allows for very rapid integration and patching of various security vulnerabilities. And then lastly, you do get to benefit from a very large community. Again, whether it be security patches or other innovations, the open source community is by far the largest development community, leveraging open protocols or standard protocols to take advantage across the networking space as well. And then what we would like to also then do is introduce these same concepts across various use cases. And as we've been working with various customers of all sizes, one of the things that we've kind of seen as a pattern is that often customers are looking to adopt different use cases or a few use cases with open networking. And with those design patterns, what we're consistently seeing is that customers are looking to deploy virtualization using VMware's vSphere, workload orchestration with OpenStack, or big data solutions around Hadoop. And in each of these cases, what you often find as a common theme is software is really the driver. It's not the physical hardware. In the hardware, they're looking to standardize and ultimately get to a rapid kind of provisioning in a very virtualized fashion. And so with that, what we're trying to drive here is the idea that you can have your own ecosystem. You can kind of pick and choose based on any one of these design patterns. And ultimately, there are similarities in terms of how they get deployed, whether it be around workload orchestration, application virtualization, or big data. And so with those kind of key themes in mind, what we're trying to empower customers with in this transition is that you can leverage standard technology, as we talked about before, adopting these design patterns across a traditional layer 2 environment with MLAG and first hop routing protocols, making it very easy to use with a Linux capability called IF up down 2, but as well as across an IP fabric or as with an overlay solution. And then wanting to make it very easy to design and easy to consume with validated solutions. And so we have stood up each one of these solutions and have created a step-by-step use case guide. So you can kind of take this, with that you'll get bill of materials and then the how-to operational guide and automation starter toolkits to be able to implement this in your environment. And then ultimately, we want to make sure that in your life cycle there are deployment tools that make it very easy. So we have use cases and automation training. In many cases, because of that community, there are templates readily available from our community of customers and ecosystem partners, as well as making those available on a remote workbench that we host called Cumulus Workbench. And ultimately, the key point here is open networking is available for all organizations of all sizes. Whether you have significant IT resources and look to kind of do it yourself in-house, or whether you're looking to your trusted advisors and partners to be able to help along the way with key design guides, tools, and reference architectures. So with that, we're very excited about this new era of bare metal and open networking, and ultimately it's about leveraging the openness to unlock that choice, not only at the infrastructure, the switch and the cable and optics level, but at all levels, whether it be around automation tools, your network virtualization solution, but being able to have horizontally also the variety of network architectures from layer 2, layer 3 to the overlay solution. You want to make sure that this IT environment that you develop, the data center, is highly responsive, not only from being a deterministic or predictable automated environment, being able to take and spin up VMs perhaps in minutes as you do today, but having the network be able to respond along with that in a highly converged and orchestrated environment. And then lastly, the basic benefit is that you have the ability to save as you grow. You can start with a 2 to 10 rack environment, but scale that outwards of thousands of rack as needed, and be able to enjoy the CapEx savings by leveraging market forces or industry standard hardware. But in turn, more importantly, as many of our customers have discovered, is really the OpEx savings that you get out of automation, being able to leverage standard or open tools, and then being able to leverage those savings in deploying, literally bi-directional, IP fabrics that, effectively, because you have now more affordable capacity. So with that, again, we're very excited about what this means, as many of customers have adopted open networking in their environments. We're looking forward to making it very easy to procure, design, and operate. And to start that journey, we have created a remote capability where you can try open networking across a number of physical hardware. So we have what we call Cumulus Workbench that we have physically stood up 1 gig, 10 gig, 40 gig switches. You can create them in a layer 2, layer 3, or an overlay solution environment, run any number of applications that we support, whether it be automation or monitoring, or your own application we can go ahead and host in your own sandbox, for which we call Cumulus Workbench. And so we encourage you to give this a try. It allows you a very hands-on approach to experience what it means, how easy it is to configure and operate, and want to make that available to the community at large.
Great, William. Thanks. We have a lot of great questions coming in. First question, do you have any detailed use cases that you can touch on or that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, so the use cases that, use cases can come in a number of different fashions. They're the ones that we had talked about here more recently around virtualization. So many customers adopting use cases around vSphere. Hadoop is a very common one, distributed storage. And so whether it be around vSAN or Ceph implementation, taking advantage of affordable capacity is a key focus area. The other one is around workload orchestration or OpenStack. So one of the key pain points, if you will, around OpenStack is around configuration of the network. And so by leveraging standard infrastructure, making it very easy to use, as we have plugins for OpenStack as well, is being able to leverage open networking in all of those use cases. Now, there's also the very basic use case, as many customers have been comfortable with the idea in inserting open networking in their current environments in a very traditional layer 2 application. So as we support MLAG and various rapid spanning tree protocols, you can just leverage in a very standard networking use case, or an IP fabric is traditionally what Cumulus Linux was historically built on. And so they do span a number of different types of use cases, from a solution level down to the basic networking architecture.
Great. So next question, is there a training and certification program available?
So we do have a very broad offering around enablement programs and curricula. And so as you can see here, please feel free to reach out to us by way of the email alias. There is a number of consulting and training programs that we have available. And so look forward to being able to help our partners and customers quickly come up to speed as it relates to open networking.
Great. And we're also launching a new training and certification page, I believe tomorrow, right?
Yeah, that's right.
cumulusnetworks.com/training-and-certification. Excuse me. Next question. Can we test Cumulus on any white box switch?
So theoretically, the concept of white box switches or open networking is that, as long as they have the bootloading environment, as we discussed, Oni, the open network install environment, you should be able to install third-party operating systems, whether it be Cumulus Linux or others that are out there in the industry. This is the goal that we're trying to drive towards the industry. The reality today is there is a fair amount of integration work that needs to happen, as each vendor's bare metal switch have different environmental implementations, CPU subsystems, and so we're still at a point where we at Cumulus Networks are integrating the third-party bare metal switch with Cumulus Linux and with Oni as that bootloader. And so today you can go to our hardware compatibility list on our website, and you can find, I think, upwards of 20 different configurations from 5 different manufacturers of all different configurations, 1 gig, 10 gig, and 40 gig, that support open networking along with Cumulus Linux.
Great. And next question, is open networking only for data center, or can it be used for ISP deployments as well?
So today, Cumulus Networks, as a startup, we are, I would say, focused and very much focused on being able to enable and transform data center environments, predominantly leaf and spine or top of rack and aggregation switching solutions. Depending on the particular feature requirements, certainly from a performance standpoint, you can take advantage of bare metal switching, for a gateway environment. But ultimately, it really depends on the particular service level and application requirements that you might have in terms of VPN technology, security technology. And so encourage you to follow up with us, and we'd have to look at that use case a bit more specifically, as we do support it in some environments, but not entirely.
Great. Next question. Actually, a lot of great questions coming in. For those of us that have Oni Compatible Hardware, is there an evaluation of Cumulus Linux to test in our lab?
Yes. So if you're interested in an evaluation of Cumulus Linux and you already have Oni Compatible Hardware from our hardware compatibility list, please do reach out to us, and we look forward to being able to help you out with evaluations.
Great. And then next question, do we have any, well, I can probably answer this, but is there any additional information on our website that can show integration with overlay controllers like NSX or Open Contrail, and how does that integrate with Cumulus OS-based switch?
Yes, so we do have, frankly, a wealth of information on our website, everything from other webinars like this that specifically have focused on overlay controller solutions to white papers, and as well as our partners have similar offerings, white papers and design guides around how to integrate with open networking and bare metal switches along with Cumulus Linux. And so if you're not finding what you're looking for there, again, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll help connect those dots.
And then other than Broadcom, what other silicon is supported by Cumulus Linux?
So today, Broadcom, as you may know, whether adopted by OEM switch vendors or the other bare metal switch vendors that we work with, Broadcom by far is kind of the more prevalent solution. And so that is the switch fabric that we have adopted today. We do support a variety of CPUs, whether it be historically PowerPC. You're finding more and more x86 going forward in the future. And ultimately, we do express a desire, and ultimately we'll look to invest in creating that open ecosystem of switch fabrics and CPU subsystems. But today it is Broadcom, and we are evaluating all switch fabrics. So there are a number of different startups as well as established switch fabrics that are available that we'll look to introduce in the coming future.
Next question, could this be deployed as a packet flow switch?
So the concept of a packet flow switch, well, maybe back up a second. As I mentioned earlier, we are very much focused on the data center market, in particular around being able to provide highly affordable capacity, highly automatable, and really in that top of rack server or storage access in traditional leaf and spine architectures. In the event there are some customers looking for packet flow technology, or some people might call it NFV, network function virtualization. It is an area that we are investigating, and it is an area that likely you will want to have additional NPU functionality to be able to provide that functionality, as opposed to relying on the control plane CPU, as depending on scale and performance requirements, you can quickly overrun the control plane CPU and memory that's available in a traditional networking switch.
Great. And will Cumulus Networks or Cumulus Linux training be available for download somewhere at some point?
So we do have training that is available today. we have self-paced training that you can go through a CL 101 course, go through a self-paced lab guide, and leveraging the Cumulus Workbench resource to do at your own leisure. And so that in fact is available today, again, with CL 101. Now, and as well, we are looking to package and offer other types of remote training capabilities as you go on. If there are particular areas of training and technology that you're interested in, please, again, reach out to us as we appreciate the feedback.
And another question, can you talk a little bit about Cumulus Linux and Open Daylight project, and if they are related or if they're not related?
Sure. So, as we kind of have talked about, Cumulus's approach to applications or controller solutions is to be open. And as we talked about, we have architectures and solutions that we've made available and customers have adopted with a number of third parties. Open Daylight is another controller solution that we're monitoring. It's questionable as to kind of what the direction is. It originally started as kind of a feeding ground for kind of the traditional OEM vendors to kind of take and drive kind of some amount of proprietary implementation and thought leadership there. And it's not clear as to kind of what the product direction is. If there is a particular use case that you're seeing out there and that we need to evaluate, again, because of our openness, we're looking to make Cumulus Linux to support any other controller solution or SDN overlay solution.
Great. And next question, who is responsible for hardware and software support?
So that's a great question. As we talked about all of the CapEx benefits and the OpEx benefits, often what our customers are looking for is, what happens or how do we address support in the event something were to come about. And the thing I would generally refer to is very similar to how you might employ support in your compute environment. We employ the same exact model. So, for example, we as Cumulus Networks provide the full integrated support for hardware and software. So we really want to take kind of any finger pointing out of the picture. And so in the event that you have an issue, and you may not know if it's a hardware issue or a software issue, there are many that are kind of transient in nature. You will always get support from Cumulus Networks 24/7 with any type of issue. So that's one scenario. The other scenario is that we have many OEM partners, as an example, and reseller partners that provide that frontline support. And so you can often reach out to them, whether it be Penguin or Acton or Dell as an example. They will also kind of provide that level of support. And then thirdly, you have the choice if it's very clear that let's say you have a power supply failure or fan failure, it's a hardware kind of RMA situation, you can certainly reach out to your local reseller or hardware vendor to initiate an RMA or return to depot.
Great. Next question, are there any other networking solutions offering a similar solution?
Yeah, so the networking industry, as we talked about, is really driving, and customers are adopting this open model. And as we've talked about, there are many industry standard hardware solutions available, and we've talked about a number of those partners today. There are other third-party operating systems available. I'm aware of a couple that have made public announcements in the past, a couple startups such as Big Switch and Beacon 8. And I believe there are others that are making investments and forays into disaggregation and making a network operating system available with industry standard switches.
Great. And so I've seen this next question come up a few times. And a lot of people are interested in, Cumulus Linux documentation or guides because they want to progress their education further. Is there anything that you would recommend in addition to docs.cumulusnetworks.com, any other reading or guides for people interested in studying or consulting.
Right. So as Carrie pointed out, first and foremost, we believe in completely open and transparency, and so to that end, all of our technical documentation, user guides are available on our website. But moreover, you do have a wealth of other content or assets around white papers, webinars as today's, but in a much more detailed technology basis. You'll find a number of other assets available out there. But ultimately, I would argue it's hard to trade off experience. And so again, kind of going back to the Cumulus workbench, being able to actually get hands-on, you will learn far more, what this means. And this is kind of in a very no strings attached, kind of very rapid motion. You can get your hands dirty very quickly by subscribing and carving out a Cumulus workbench session.
Perfect. A lot of questions coming in, and I hope you have a lot of
Bring it on.
left.
Yeah.
Does Cumulus Networks provide a BGP implementation?
Yes, and so in fact, Cumulus Networks, where JR and Nolan, our co-founders, had really built the company, was around building great IP fabrics. And so some of you may be aware that we have implemented Quagga as our IP routing stack, and we do support BGP v2, v3, OSPF, v4, v6. And so these are fully, first-class citizen routing protocols that we support. We've made a number of innovations and implementations to make it more easy to configure, easy to implement, easy to troubleshoot. And so encourage you to take a look, go after an evaluation, trial run. If there are more specific questions around BGP, whether it be around policy, performance, what have you, happy to follow up there.
Great. And a lot of people have actually been asking about our previous webinars. I believe we have about 18 different webinar recordings from the past few months on our website. So if you'd like to check those out, this one will also be available on our website, and you can find those at cumulusnetworks.com/webinars. All of our on-demand, all of our upcoming, so you can just go ahead and check those out. And the last question. Who is adopting bare metal and open networking? This is actually a two-part question. Who's adopting bare metal and open networking, or is bare metal and open networking only for the web scale operators?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So today I would say you're seeing bare metal and open networking adopted across the globe. We have customers in Japan, Australia, all parts of Asia, across Europe. And in fairness, we've seen a significant adoption here in the States, as that's kind of where we had started. Geographically, across verticals, I would say you're seeing or size of customers across all different customer bases. So certainly the web scale operators, technology markets have been early adopters, but we see financial customers, biotech, universities, higher education. In fact, we have customers in the labs environment. So national laboratories here in the U.S., we can account for the majority of them as adopters of our technology in HPC environments, small, medium environments, as well as enterprise customers. So it's become quite widespread, and a lot of that is from a products and technology standpoint, making it very easy to design, very easy to integrate into your current environments, being able to provide design guides and deployment guides to be able to take advantage of various automation tools or controller solutions have made it very easy. And so it has become quite broad. And so if there's an opportunity now, I would encourage you again to take a look at some of the assets that are available out there. The remote workbench is a very easy way to kind of get familiar with and kind of acquaint yourself with the technology.
Great. And it's funny, just when you think there's one final question, there's always more. How do you differentiate Cumulus Linux distribution approach to other open source based networking operating systems like the ONS initiative from ON Lab?
Right. So, ultimately, from a Linux distribution standpoint, I would say our focus is to maintain an open architecture, and making it fully deployable across the stack. And so this is one of the components that we talked about is, in a loosely coupled SDN architecture, we've made it, highly available across a very broad number of industry standard hardware, and we continue to invest, whether it be in new technologies or new hardware partners to make it very easy to consume. But more so, making our Linux distribution compatible across any number of network virtualization overlays, automation tools, monitoring tools. And so this will be continuing a high area of focus in the spirit of making customer choice available. More so, as you look at how we've implemented networking for Linux, this is almost a whole nother session that we can talk about around how we've made routing just much more easily deployable with OSPF unnumbered. How can we make CLOS fabrics, in some cases very complex CLOS fabrics, easy to design by way of a design program or an illustrated program, and then implement it across your IP fabric in a very predictable fashion. So we have a technology that's open source called the Prescriptive Topology Manager. And so there are a number of key innovations that we continue to make open, although the innovations may have come from Cumulus Networks originally, but ultimately solving various customer pain points across, again, operations, design, monitoring.
Great. Next question, and I'm going to actually, this will be our final question. Would it ever make sense to run Cumulus on a virtual machine instead of bare metal?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's one that we're excited about. And ultimately, as a VM, there are probably a few different lenses to kind of think about. There are many environments where people might want to just learn, and a VM can help kind of accelerate, the learning process. There may be some that want to actually do some design or development work, and so being able to spin up a VM, do some application development, is another use case. Another is to do some actual test. Now, testing, although you might be able to get and validate some key capabilities, with the VM, I'd argue there's going to be a number of areas that will be very difficult unless you have the physical environment, as it relates to performance testing, as it might relate to convergence testing, especially in some kind of scale. And then in deployment. Deployment might be another model where a VM could be helpful as a product. And so we're looking at all lifecycle components as it relates to a VM opportunity, and look to us shortly to be able to come back with a more holistic solution to that end.
Great. Thanks, William. We're out of time now. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. We hope you found this presentation about bare metal switching and open networking useful. We'd love if you offered your feedback via the follow-up email. Please tune into our next webinar on January 28th, Unlock Your Cloud Potential with Mirantis OpenStack and Cumulus Linux. Or you can join us each week for Coffee with Cumulus on Thursday for a product overview and introduction to Cumulus Linux. Details are available on our website at cumulusnetworks.com/webinar. Thank you, everyone, for your time today.